See, filthy animals like you don't belong in courthouses. You belong in cages. Officer Cole Donovan's snarl tore through the morning air like barbed wire. The words clung, bitter and jagged, to the marble walls of the federal courthouse. At his side, Officer Ryan Fletcher laughed, the sound small and mean, feeding off Donovan's cruelty. Judge Celeste Marshall, dressed in plain gray slacks, carrying a leather folio, paused mid-step. To everyone else, she looked like an ordinary black woman arriving too close to Justice's front door. To Donovan, she was prey. His palm whipped across her face with a crack that turned heads, sent pigeons skyward, and made the crowd gasp. The folio flew from her grip. Case files scattered like torn wings across the granite steps. Donovan shoved her back against the cold stone. Thought you could walk in here like you mattered? Look at you. Nothing but a black bitch in the wrong place. Fletcher raised his phone, grinning, capturing the spectacle like it was sport. Celeste's jaw throbbed. Along her cheekbone, a dark bloom began to rise, the kind of bruise that announces itself before the pain has finished speaking. Yet her spine stayed straight. She bent slowly, gathering her papers one by one, eyes fixed on Donovan's badge as though already etching it into a verdict. Then, calm as scripture, she whispered, "Remember every word you just said." Phones captured the moment. Live streams erupted with outrage, disbelief, and a sick familiarity that makes the breath come shallow. Comments scrolled faster than eyes could follow. "Is this real? He hit her? Somebody stop him." Yet the steps themselves remained a stage of silence. Donovan's chest rose, pleased by the size of his audience. Fletcher hovered, smug and eager, a moon to a cheap, violent sun. At the doorway, Bailiff Frank Henderson stood with his arms folded, 30 years of service drawn tight across his shoulders. He had shepherded juries, calmed fathers, steadied children. He had seen tempers squander themselves against oak benches and the cool stare of law. But this theater of humiliation on the courthouse steps, scraped at his oath like grit in a wound. "Officers," he said, voice gravel low. Donovan didn't turn. "Court business," he snapped, grabbing Celeste's wrists. Steel handcuffs clacked and tightened, their cold bite ringing louder than the crowd's intake of breath. Henderson's eyes met Celeste's. He didn't find panic there. He found storage, a ledger being kept in perfect, silent columns. Prosecutor Rebecca Shaw crossed the vestibule with a paper cup cooling in her hand and a calendar crowding her mind. Disorder before noon irritated her. Disorder in uniform unsettled her. She caught the image of Donovan shoving a woman past the magnetometer and felt an old, unwelcome tightness under the rib. "What's this?" she asked Henderson, who followed them in. "Temporary proceeding," he said, tone flat as a bench order. Shaw nodded because nodding is what keeps a morning moving, but her gaze lingered on the woman's face, the swelling cheek, the steady eyes, the refusal to perform fear. They pushed Celeste into a holding room, a small, bright box engineered to make people feel smaller, brighter, and boxed. Donovan took the corner like a throne, arms folded high, the grin of a man who mistakes audience for authority. Fletcher scratched at a form, pen stuttering lies into the wrong boxes. Henderson placed himself at the jamb, immovable as a column, the court's heartbeat pulsing slowly through him. Celeste lowered herself into a metal chair. Her wrists were bound. Her papers lay scattered like fallen witnesses at her feet. She did not plead. She did not protest. Her eyes fixed on the polished tabletop where Donovan's badge floated in reflection, upside down, warped, already hinting at reversal. He believed her silence was defeat. In truth, it was storage. She was banking every insult, every gesture, every laugh. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, heavy with the weight of things unsaid, waiting for the right stage. "Name," Donovan demanded, satisfied by the echo of command. Celeste gave none. He smiled for the audience he carried in his head. Fletcher's pen dug harder, as if pressure could make fiction pass for fact. Henderson's silence deepened. He had seen how morning arrogance ages by afternoon. Elsewhere in the courthouse, Janet Ellison moved swiftly down a restricted corridor, her navy suit cutting a precise line through fluorescent light. In her hand, a sealed drive labeled in stark black letters, Donovan Complaints and Internal Affairs Summaries. For 6 months, she and Celeste had gathered threads, stitching a net too broad for arrogance to escape. Over her shoulder, a garment bag swayed, black cloth folded around authority like night around a secret. Janet did not deliver it now. Not yet. Timing was everything. She pressed her phone and sent a single word to a secure line. Ready. Above the river, Chief Judge David Carter sat in an office that carried the city's reflection like hammered tin. He opened Janet's encrypted message, read the line once, then again. Detained outside. Pulling 6-month file, awaiting instruction. He did not reply. Timing is the hinge on which justice turns. A door opened too soon is only a draft. He folded his hands over a blank legal pad and listened to a building he knew by heart begin to change its breathing. Back in the holding room, the camera above the door glowed red, a patient eye that does not blink. Celeste's gaze fell to the scattered pages. One corner lifted and settled, as if the air itself had written a footnote. She drew a slow breath, the kind that steadies surgeons and saints. She said nothing out loud. The silence itself became her first piece of evidence. Donovan adjusted the set of his shoulders for a mirror that wasn't there. Fletcher checked the time and found it stubborn. Henderson watched the bruise along Celeste's cheek darken at the edges, a visible affidavit no one in the room could suppress. Somewhere down the corridor, a door latch clicked, the small sound of preparation, and the courthouse shifted minutely on its axis. It is a building made for oaths, for names spoken into record, for truth that sometimes arrives late but still insists on its chair. This morning, the Temple of Law had become a stage, and the stage had found its protagonist. Justice may be blind, but in this house she listens first. And listening, she had already begun to see. Steel handcuffs snapped shut with a courthouse echo, the chain biting as Officer Cole Donovan steered Celeste down the corridor. The bruise along her cheek deepened by degrees, a dark bloom reciting what his palm had already sworn. "Now you'll know what it's like to be one of your people." "Behind bars," he said, pleased by the sound of his own sentence. Officer Ryan Fletcher shouldered doors and smirked at the phones. Bailiff Frank Henderson paced a step behind, close enough to catch a stumble, far enough to look like stone. They passed portraits of judges in sepia rows, names Henderson had spoken under his breath at retirements and funerals. He glanced at Celeste's profile, the composure, the disciplined breath, the subtle gravity of someone who belongs to the bench, not the rail. Recognition struck clean as a gavel. He eased alongside, voice lowered to a respectful thread. "Ma'am, do you need assistance?" It wasn't a question to a detainee. It was a private salute to who she was. Celeste kept her gaze forward. "My secretary, Janet Ellison, holding E3, no commotion." She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Authority can be as quiet as a nod. The holding room was a bright square of intimidation. Bolted chair, polished table, the hum of fluorescent resolve. Donovan fed the cuffs through the steel loop with theatrical care and planted Celeste in the chair, as if the furniture required proof he existed. "Name," he said, sharpening the single syllable. Celeste met the tabletop instead of his eyes. In the glassy reflection, his badge lay upside down, already hinting at reversal. Fletcher bent over a form and scratched too hard, as if pressure could make fiction pass for fact. Henderson took the jam, arms folded, presence steady, oath intact. Henderson stepped into the hall and lifted an internal handset at a wall panel, the casual choreography of a man who knows every door's temperament. "Property verification for E3, he told the clerk on duty. "Code for let chambers through without fuss. No names, no flags." He hung up and returned to stillness. Inside the room, Donovan staged a posture for an invisible jury. "Go ahead," he told Fletcher. "Make sure you get the bruise. Juries love drama." Through the wire glass, a navy silhouette approached. Henderson gave a single nod. Janet Ellison entered like a whisper that had learned to walk in heels. She wore her chamber's pass on a narrow lanyard and the calm of someone who can open storms. Donovan barely glanced at her. Arrogance has a way of misfiling threats. "Property check," Henderson said, neutral as stone. It covered everything and confessed nothing. Janet set a small flat device on the table, black and unremarkable, a secure line dressed down as office clutter. Celeste did not look at Janet. She kept her eyes on the reflection of the badge, on the bruise in the glass, on the precise angle where truth would land. She leaned in, close enough for a microphone to catch without strain, far enough for the lens to learn nothing. Her voice was a steady metronome. "Pull every file we've compiled these 6 months. Start with Donovan. Bring my robe at recess, not before." Janet nodded once. "Understood." She palmed the device back the way one lifts a paperclip and slipped it into her folder. The choreography was so ordinary it became invisible. Donovan arched an eyebrow. "You two done passing notes?" he said, hallway sly. "This is a holding room, sweetheart, not a book club." The line hung in the air like cheap cologne. Fletcher snorted, trying on someone else's bravado. Henderson did not move, but the set of his jaw changed by a millimeter. He had learned the discipline of allowing a fool to write his own transcript. Celeste remained motionless, wrists tethered to the ring, breath measured, silence banking interest for the hour that mattered. Janet stepped out, and the door sighed shut on one soft seal. In the corridor, her pace quickened. She flashed her pass at a stanchion and turned down a restricted hall toward records. The air there colder than truth needs to be. The clerk behind glass recognized the chamber's code without reading it. He slid a thick binder across the counter, its spine heavy as an obligation. The cover stamped its own privacy in block letters: "Internal Affairs, Confidential." Janet eased the binder into a blue file cart, the kind that makes extraordinary documents look like errands. She texted one word on the secure line, "Moving," and pushed off toward the elevators. Then she changed her mind and took the stairs. Elevators keep logs. Stairs keep secrets. Back in E3, Donovan checked his watch and found it smug. He adjusted his stance to please a bodycam, turning just enough to catch his grin reflected in the tabletop, the badge inverted beneath it like a private omen. Fletcher reread his notes and didn't recognize them yet as future perjury. Henderson watched the red diode above the door, a patient pupil that never blinks. Celeste let her breathing settle into the room's metronome and felt the chain hiss when she shifted. She studied the bruise's shadow in the tabletop and stored each new word Donovan gifted her. Silence, too, can testify. In records, the clerk shut the drawer and exhaled. Paper has weight, patterns have more. Janet pushed the cart past a security camera, the lens catching the edge of the binder in perfect focus for the breath-long beat between steps. The stamped title flashed plainly, Internal Affairs, Confidential, and then slipped back into ordinary as the cart rolled on. Henderson's gaze returned to Celeste. The recognition that had started in the hallway settled into certainty. He did not bow. Courts don't bow to themselves. But a fraction of space opened around her, the way a room makes room for its center. Donovan, unaware, rehearsed the narrative he thought he owned. The building listened without agreement. Janet reached the corner, turned, and disappeared toward chambers and the river of locked doors that knew her name. The camera over the records door blinked once, slow, patient, unassuming. In the holding room, Donovan tilted his chin toward the lens he trusted and delivered one more line to no one in particular. Some people need reminding where they stand. The table sent his grin back to him upside down, like a future about to turn. Steel cuffs closed with a courthouse echo, the chain biting as Officer Cole Donovan steered Celeste down the corridor. The bruise along her cheek darkened a shade, an affidavit blooming under skin. Now you'll know what it's like to be one of your people. Behind bars, he said, pleased with the shape of the sentence as it left his mouth. Officer Ryan Fletcher shouldered doors, phone tilted for one more shot. Bailiff Frank Henderson kept a measured pace behind, close enough to catch a stumble, far enough to look like stone. They passed the sepia rows of judges on the wall. Henderson's gaze moved from those frames to the woman between the uniforms. The disciplined breath, the quiet spine, the folio pressed to her ribs. A corner of paper had slipped free during the scuffle on the steps. Now it peeked again, stamped with a small federal crest and the faint, blocky scar of a word he knew by heart. Under seal. Recognition struck clean as a gavel. He eased forward, voice lowered to a respectful thread. "Ma'am, do you need assistance?" Celeste didn't turn. Her answer was 4 quiet beats, each trimmed to the bone. "Chambers, Janet, E3, quiet." Henderson nodded once. Authority doesn't always arrive with volume. Sometimes it travels by glance and grammar. They swung into holding E3, a bright square designed to make people feel smaller. Donovan fed the cuffs through the bolted ring in the table with theatrical care and planted Celeste in the chair as if furniture required proof of him. "Name," he said, sharpening the single syllable for effect. Celeste studied the tabletop's polished skin. In its reflection, his badge lay inverted, already hinting at reversal. Fletcher scratched too hard at a form, as though pressure could make fiction pass for fact. The camera above the door glowed red, a patient pupil that didn't blink, didn't agree, only remembered. Henderson slipped into the hall and lifted the internal handset at the wall panel. The motion was casual, office ordinary. "Chambers," he told the clerk, keeping it dry. "Sealed materials retrieval to E3, escort at door." He did not elaborate. Courthouses survive by habits that don't ask for spectacle. Inside, Donovan adjusted his stance to please his own lens. "Go on," he told Fletcher. "Make sure you get the bruise. Juries love drama." He turned back to Celeste, a smile like a stamp. This is a holding room, not your courtroom. Henderson returned to the jam, posture neutral, oath intact. The hum of lights pressed down, time stretched in the way it does when a room is being watched. Through the wire glass, a navy silhouette approached. Henderson offered a single nod. Janet Ellison entered like a whisper that had learned to walk in heels. Her chamber's pass lay flat against her lapel. In one hand, she carried a sealed evidence envelope and a chain of custody clipboard, the kind of paperwork that turns attention into procedure. "Property?" Donovan asked, bored and superior. "Sealed materials retrieval," Henderson answered, neutral as stone. "Chamber's request." Janet's eyes did not seek Celeste's. She didn't need them to. "Any page bearing the under seal stamp must be recovered to Chambers," she said evenly, the script of policy riding her voice. "We'll keep the chain intact and log it." Donovan shrugged. "Knock yourself out," he said, more interested in the performance he believed he owned. Fletcher kept writing. Janet set the envelope on the table like a paperweight and surveyed the papers scattered on the floor. A torn corner flashed the small federal crest. She knelt, gathered the sheet with two precise fingers, and slid it into the mouth of the envelope. The adhesive whispered shut. She signed the clipboard, then held it for Henderson. He signed without commentary, the way you hold a door, because that is what the house expects you to do. Celeste remained still, wrists tethered, breath measured. She spoke only once, low enough for the microphone not to strain, flat enough for the lens to learn nothing. "Thank you." Janet nodded as if acknowledged by a stranger in a library. "Chambers will secure," she said. "No more." She lifted the envelope from the table and tucked it beneath the clipboard. Ordinary as errands, Donovan smirked, hungry for his next line. "You two finished passing notes?" he said, hallway sly. Fletcher snorted. Henderson's jaw changed by a millimeter. He had learned the discipline of letting a fool write his own transcript. Janet stepped back. The door sealed with a soft sigh. In the corridor, her pace quickened. She pressed her pass at a stanchion and turned toward the service elevator, then thought better of it and took the stairs, the path for people who prefer their work to leave fewer footprints. A records clerk behind glass glanced up as she passed. He didn't call out. She didn't pause. The envelope sat steady under her arm, its weight not heavy but consequential, like a word you have chosen not to waste. Back in E3, Fletcher reread the lines he'd carved into the form and found them already too rehearsed. Donovan checked his watch and found it smug. He adjusted again to give his body cam an angle it would appreciate later, unaware that the table sent his grin back upside down. Henderson studied the red diode above the door. Truth seldom hurries. It simply keeps walking until it arrives. Footsteps skimmed the vestibule. Prosecutor Rebecca Shaw appeared at the corner of the window, moving on habit through the morning's machinery. She'd planned a clean docket and a quiet coffee. Instead, her eyes landed for a heartbeat on the room. The cuffed woman with the swelling cheek, Donovan's cocked posture, Henderson's column-still frame, and through the wire glass of the hallway, the judicial secretary slipping past with a sealed envelope tucked to her ribs. Shaw's gaze snagged. The bruise was darker now, evidence no one had bothered to name. The envelope carried the square geometry of authority, the faint shine of a federal seal through paper. She did not stop. She did not speak. She walked on, the heel of her shoe ticking a fraction slower than before, the picture repeating on the inside of her eyelids like a warning she couldn't yet pronounce. Inside E3, The hum steadied. Celeste's eyes returned to the mirrored badge. Fletcher's pen slowed, the ink catching at the edge of a box. Donovan rolled his shoulders, pleased with the story he believed the room had agreed to tell. The camera above the door watched without blinking. Buildings like this are made for oaths, for names spoken into record, for truths that sometimes arrive late but insist on their chair. Then the micro-twist, a close glance at Fletcher's form as he signs, the lens pausing over the line he never reads, under penalty of perjury, before his signature scrawls across it with a flourish he will not remember. The pen lifts, the ink gleams, the page accepts him at his word. The temporary courtroom buzzed, a low hive of whispers, screens held low, 100 private verdicts forming in the dark. Judge Harold Vance adjusted his robe, tapped his pen twice, and signaled he was ready. Ready, at least, to be convinced by uniforms. Henderson escorted Celeste to the defense table. The cuffs came off for decorum. Red impressions ringed her wrists like narrow bracelets of heat. The bruise on her cheek had deepened into a stark, undeniable comma. She sat straight, hands folded, gaze level. She did not hunt the room for sympathy. She kept her own counsel and her breath. "We'll proceed," Vance said, mild voice over firm assumptions. "Name for the record." "Marshall," she answered, even and clear. "Occupation?" She held his eyes. "Juris Doctor." A few heads turned, unsure if they'd heard a job or a credential. Vance accepted it without thinking. The record only cares that a line is filled. "Officer Donovan, your statement," Vance said, already pointing him toward the stand. Donovan took the oathless chair like a stage. He angled his body so the gallery could see the badge and the jaw at once. At approximately 9:12 a.m., subject crossed the perimeter line. He began, cadence smooth from too many repetitions. Ignored lawful commands. Advanced in a threatening manner. I used minimal force to maintain order and protect bystanders. Above the door. The wall clock sat stubborn at 9:09. The second hand kept sawing the air, indifferent to reports that ran faster than time. Vance nodded. "Minimal force?" he repeated, as if the phrase were its own proof. "Yes, Your Honor. Open-hand redirection." Donovan did not glance toward the bruise he had authored. Rebecca Shaw rose, legal pad in hand, voice trimmed to the neutral edge prosecutors practice. "Officer Donovan, did the subject refuse commands?" "Yes." "Did she use profanity?" "Yes." "Did you perceive a threat to public safety?" "Yes, I did. The questions were short bridges that delivered him safely where she wanted him to stand." Shaw pivoted. "Officer Fletcher." Fletcher slid into the chair, back too straight, eyes pinging between the judge and Donovan. "As I wrote this morning on the intake form, under penalty of perjury, I observed the subject refuse commands," he said, reading his own handwriting to steady his nerves. She moved toward the doors. Officer Donovan placed himself between her and the public. He swallowed. Her jaw was set. She looked aggressive. Shaw smoothed a page. "Did you observe Officer Donovan give clear, repeated commands?" "Yes." "And did the subject comply?" "No." Her tone never left its lane, but every answer landed like another rubber stamp. Threat, safety, commands. Vance steepled his fingers, pleased with the shape the narrative was taking. "Ms. Marshall, do you wish to respond?" Celeste turned a single page in front of her, as if consulting a clock no one else could see. "Not to content," she said. "To procedure." Vance raised an eyebrow. "Name your concern." "Whether the record reflects that witnesses have been sworn," she replied. No heat, no flourish, A single thread tugged. The courtroom inhaled. The clerk had half risen earlier, but Vance had waved him off. The muscle in his jaw ticked now with the memory. He recovered his tone. "We'll handle the formality," he said, dismissive. To Shaw, "You may continue." Shaw turned back to Donovan. "Clarify your time." "Officer, 9:12?" "9:12, Donovan said, steady. A rustle moved through the gallery like grass in wind. The clock overhead slipped to 9:10. A law student in the third row counted silently on her fingers and then stopped, cheeks flushed with the impoliteness of noticing. "Officer," Shaw continued, "describe the subject's demeanor." Donovan's eyes hardened. Hostile, like she owned the place. The wording landed too familiar, too close to the courtyard. A woman near the aisle pressed her lips together until they whitened. Vance shifted his gaze to Celeste. "For the record, are you represented today?" "Not at this time," Celeste said. "I will reserve." "Do you contest the officer's account?" She let the question pass her once, like a wave that can be ridden or resisted. "I will answer under oath and proper order," she said. Calm, precise, a promise disguised as compliance. Shaw bristled a fraction. "Your Honor, the people ask the court to note the subject's reluctance to engage." "Noted," Vance said, already nodding in rhythm with Donovan's certainty. Fletcher cleared his throat. He lifted the form he'd mentioned, the fresh ink still glossy along the bottom. "If the court wants it," he offered, "I can submit my intake statement, signed this hour under penalty of perjury." He said it like armor. The phrase hung in the air like a boomerang. "Submit it," Vance said. The clerk took the form, eyes flicking to the signature line, and then, as if by reflex, to the clock. The minute hand crept, unpersuaded. From the back, a voice whispered, "Check the footage," and another hushed it. Habit stronger than hope. The room's temperature shifted by a degree. Outrage warming caution, caution cooling outrage. Shaw closed her pad. "No further questions, for now." Vance leaned back, lined up his pen with the edge of the bench, and inhaled the satisfaction of a tidy morning. On the basis of statements and observations, the court. Henderson stepped forward, quiet as a column that decided to move. He placed a narrow slip on the bench where Vance's fingers already rested. The handwriting was clerk neat. Under oath affirmation pending for witnesses. Vance read it. A small click sounded in his throat. He set the pen down and picked up the gavel like a man retreating to the safety of procedure. "For procedural clarity," he said, voice smoothed to glass, "this court will stand in brief recess. 5 minutes. Do not leave the corridor." The gavel tapped once. The sound was small, but it traveled. Donovan gave Fletcher a half-smile that mistook interruption for victory. Shaw's eyes lingered a heartbeat too long on Celeste's cheek, then on the door Janet had used. Henderson resumed his post, gaze fixed on the line that separates order from its performance. Celeste did not move. She had been still all morning. She knew how to wait. The gavel's knock had not finished traveling when Celeste lifted her chin a degree, hands folded, voice even. "Your Honor, one clarifying question for the record. Before recess." Judge Vance disliked being stopped once he had sketched an exit, but openly refusing a polite request would look worse than indulging it. He aligned his pen with the bench edge and nodded, impatience disguised as courtesy. "One, make it brief." The room stilled, screens lowered. The clerk half rose toward the oath card. Vance waved him down without looking. Donovan leaned back, pleased. Fletcher sat rigid, knuckles whitening. Celeste turned to the man who had performed certainty all morning. Her tone cooled, not sharpened. "Officer Donovan, will you swear to every word you've signed this morning?" No flourish, no accusation. A single thread passed once through the fabric. Donovan tipped his chin to the gallery, letting his badge find the light. "Absolutely." The word landed like a seal. The clerk's fingers touched the oath card, then withdrew. Henderson's stillness gained weight, the way a column receives a roof. Vance reclaimed the room with a clipped throat clear. "Professional," he told himself. "Very well. The clerk will administer proper oath on resumption. This court stands in recess for 15 minutes. Do not leave the corridor." One tap of the gavel, chairs scraped, the gallery's hum returned. Breath, text, restrained anger. The clerk stacked his materials, the oath card now on top where it belonged. Henderson swung the side gate and held it, face a study in neutral duty. Donovan leaned toward Fletcher, comfortable inside a story he believed he authored. His mouth barely moved. "They can't touch us." He didn't whisper to be overheard. He whispered to savor himself. The ceiling mic caught the line and fed it back into the room's speakers, thin as breath. Several heads turned, uncertain whether arrogance had spoken aloud or conscience had found a voice. "Right this way," Henderson said, opening the rail. Celeste stood. The red impressions where cuffs had been looked like narrow bracelets of heat. The bruise on her cheek had darkened into a quiet rebuttal. She stepped into the aisle with the economy of someone who wastes nothing. Not words, not motion, not time. In the corridor, away from the gallery's eyes, Henderson matched her pace half a step behind. Celeste did not look back. "Mr. Henderson," she said softly, each word clipped to courtesy, "please message Janet Ellison in chambers. Bring the materials we've compiled and my robe to holding E3 during recess." No code beyond the sentence. Professional to professional. Henderson's answer was a single, almost invisible nod. He peeled off to a wall panel, lifted the handset, and returned the building to itself. "Chambers," he said. "Seated contact. Deliver to E3 during recess." He set the phone back in its cradle and resumed his post without ceremony. Celeste continued down the narrow hall. In the glass of a framed directory, she caught an inverted flash of metal as officers passed behind. Donovan's badge returning her gaze upside down. She drew a long, steady breath, the kind you use to thread a needle in poor light. Back in the courtroom, the clerk straightened the witness stand and placed the oath card where a hand would meet it without confusion. Shaw remained at counsel table, motionless. Her eyes tracked bench, rail, door, then settled on nothing. A prosecutor knows how to wait without revealing that she is waiting. Donovan and Fletcher exited by a different door, taking the long way, as men do when they believe a building is theirs. Donovan adjusted his collar for a camera that wasn't there. The corridor declined to applaud. Fletcher saw his reflection in a dark pane and did not like what it told him about the color of his face. Henderson rejoined Celeste at the holding room threshold. 15, he said, as if time belonged to him only in the decent way it belongs to anyone who respects a schedule. He opened the door. She entered. The seal sighed shut like restraint remembering its manners. Silence in E3 had a different weight than silence in court. Here the lights hummed and the table gleamed, and the red diode over the door watched without blinking. Celeste rested her palms on the cool surface and lowered her gaze to the faint reflection of the bruise, the ghost of a badge, and the chain ring waiting for nothing. She did not rehearse. She did not gloat. She waited. In chambers, a handset clicked into its cradle. Footsteps shifted paperweight across a desk. Somewhere between those sounds, the building did what old courthouses do when they've decided to preserve a moment. It listened. The corridor outside carried the soft traffic of a recess. Heels on linoleum, the rustle of a legal pad, a door latch choosing sides. The gallery's hum thinned to a wire. Some could not bear to watch another minute. Others could not bear to miss it. Neither camp left. Vance paused in the doorway to his robing room, hand on the frame, eyes on the clock. He disliked surprises. He disliked more being reminded of steps he had skipped. He squared his shoulders and arranged his face into the expression of a man who had always meant to do it this way. 5 minutes would have been a pause. 15 was a corridor long enough for memory to catch up with procedure. On the witness stand, the oath card waited, white and simple as a promise. In the ceiling, the mic that had swallowed a boast settled back to its patient green. And in holding E3, Celeste's question nested inside Donovan's answer like a fuse tucked into powder. Silent now, certain later. Henderson eased the holding room door shut and let the corridor settle. He posted himself at the latch, the kind of quiet that means order. Inside, the lights hummed. The red diode over the door kept its patient watch. Celeste placed her palms on the table and drew one long, measured breath. 15 minutes. The bruise along her cheek had deepened into a single, faithful line of proof. In the polished steel, she saw its echo beside the faint ghost of an inverted badge. Harm and emblem, sharing a frame. A soft knock. Henderson opened just enough for Janet Ellison to slip through. She carried a garment bag and a slim folder. No ceremony. She set the folder on the table and unzipped the bag halfway to show black wool with a quiet edge of gold. Then she stopped. Timing mattered. Henderson stepped inside and pulled the door to. He stayed near the glass, a wall that listens. Minimal packet, Janet said, voice low. Docket history of this morning, oath card, clerk's memo on reassignment procedure, nothing more. Celeste opened the folder. The pages were crisp and few, enough to straighten a room. She closed it and looked up. The center of the space returned to her. Phone, Janet said, offering a secure handset. Chief Judge Carter standing by. Celeste dialed and spoke without haste. Chief Judge, this is Judge Celeste Marshall. Brief report. Assault on courthouse steps. Temporary hearing opened without proper oath. The room is unstable. I am prepared to assume the bench to restore procedure and address immediate issues arising from officer conduct. Carter did not waste a word. I've reviewed Chambers' summary. You are authorized to take the bench for the remainder of this matter. The bench is yours. Thank you, Chief. We will begin again, under oath. The line clicked to quiet. Janet reclaimed the handset. Henderson inclined his head. Acknowledgement without fuss. Janet lifted the garment bag to the chair and eased the zipper down. The robe waited, heavy with use and purpose. Celeste stood. She slid her arms into the sleeves and drew the fabric across her shoulders. The weight settled like a decision. Across the room, a narrow mirror hung above a cabinet. Celeste faced it. The bruise along her cheekbone sat in the glass beside the clean gold piping of the robe. Wound and warrant. Injury and authority. For the first time all morning, they belonged to the same person in the same frame. Janet stepped beside her and placed the slim folder beneath Celeste's hand. No clutter, no delay, oath card on top, docket summary beneath. enough to move the day forward. "Mr. Henderson," Celeste said, eyes still on the mirror, "when we re-enter, we proceed in proper order. Witnesses under oath. Records by source. The room will be calm." "Yes, Your Honor." The title landed in the small space like a level being set. Henderson checked the corridor, then the clock. He listened to the building breathe. Down the hall, a door latched and released. Footsteps turned. The gallery murmured, an unsettled tide that hadn't decided whether to hope. Janet gathered the empty garment bag and moved to the door. She would clear the short, private path that joined Holding to the well. No one would see urgency. They would see routine, and routine would do the lifting. Celeste adjusted the fall of one sleeve. She lifted the oath card, scanned words she knew by heart, and placed it back atop the folder. She took a sip of water, not for courage, only for clarity. Her breath remained even. "What about Judge Vance?" Janet asked, almost a whisper. "He will yield," Celeste said. "The bench is order, not ego. No heat, no need." Henderson cracked the door to the corridor. He saw Donovan returning through the opposite entrance, still talking, a man rehearsing applause. Fletcher trailed, eyes unsettled. At counsel table, Rebecca Shaw stood very still, pen idle, gaze on the empty bench like a question learning its words. Celeste gathered the folder in her left hand. With her right, she touched the robe at the shoulder. A small alignment, nothing more. The bruise was there. The gold edge was there. Both told the truth. Henderson stepped out first, squared at the threshold between back hall and courtroom. He looked once left, once right, then forward. The space ahead seemed to recognize him. Janet slipped into the well and took the outer edge of the aisle, an usher without a script. No one in the gallery turned. They felt movement before they saw it. A row of phones lowered, uncertain of their moment. Celeste crossed the short distance from Holding to the wing of the courtroom. Each step was quiet, exact, unhurried. The robe moved like night taught to walk. The folder kept its flat weight against her palm. She did not look toward the crowd. She did not look toward Donovan. She looked toward the bench. Henderson reached the doorway of the courtroom proper and stopped. He set his shoulders. He took a single, deliberate breath, the kind you take when you mean to lift the posture of an entire room. He held it a fraction, then let it go. On the far side, the clerk placed the oath card where a hand would find it without confusion. The wall clock eased to the quarter hour. The red diode over the door held steady. Celeste nodded once to Janet. It was not agreement. It was readiness. Henderson opened his mouth. The words rose from just ahead of him, old and exact, carrying across the wood and glass with the quiet force of a rule returning to itself. All rise. The robe moved like night taught to walk as Celeste slid her arms into the sleeves. Weight settled where the morning had tried to bruise her small. In the narrow mirror, black cloth met the violet flare on her cheekbone, wound and warrant stitched into one reflection. Memory arrived in flashes, a kitchen of second jobs, a librarian who kept the lights on, professors who pushed her name toward the law, a first bench where her hands shook and then learned to be still. The slap from hours ago returned as a bright crack. The hand, the wall, the papers, then emptied into focus. She was not here to relive it. She was here to weigh it. Henderson opened the door. The corridor breathed. The bench waited the way a mountain waits, present before you arrive. They entered from the side well. Murmurs thinned. Screens lowered. The clerk touched the oath card as if checking a pulse. Donovan turned in his chair, wearing a smile that had nowhere left to land. Fletcher stared at the floor. All rise. Benches creaked, purses stilled. The room came to its feet as if pulled upright by a line. All rise for the Honorable Federal Judge Celeste Marshall, Henderson called, voice level as a plum. Celeste crossed the carpet in measured beats. Gold piping traced her throat. The bruise kept its color. She placed a slim folder on the bench and sat. Judge Vance had already stepped down, one hand at his collar, dignity shaken but intact. He moved aside with the care of a man choosing the institution over himself. He did not argue. He yielded. Donovan's jaw slackened. The practiced ease unspooled. His eyes flicked to the clock, the door, the robe. Fletcher's breath shortened. Shaw's attention narrowed until it cut. "Good morning," Celeste said, voice even. "We will begin again, under oath." The clerk advanced. Paper moved. Henderson swung the witness gate. The gallery held a collective breath. Celeste met Donovan's gaze, not long, not cruel. "Officer Donovan, you told a woman, 'This isn't my courtroom.' It is now." The line was not thunder. It was placement. Relief trembled along the pews as if something heavy had been lifted by a sentence. "Your Honor," Donovan began. "You will be sworn," Celeste said. "So will Officer Fletcher. We will proceed by source and order. Public footage. Officer bodycam. Written statements signed today. Counsel may be heard afterward." Vance took a chair along the side rail, hands folded, learning again the older discipline. Watch before you decide. Shaw capped her pen and set it aside. Fletcher rubbed his palms against his trousers and studied the prints he left there. "Clerk," Celeste said, "prepare the display." A chime answered. The large monitor woke to a waiting slate, time code blinking, courthouse seal centered. The menu listed inputs already staged: lobby camera north, steps cam 2, body cam unit 14, audio ceiling array A. On the evidence cart, a remote blinked its red dot like a tiny heartbeat. Donovan saw the list and flinched. He had not ordered this order. The story he wore like a uniform was about to meet a uniform that did not bend. "This will be orderly," Celeste told the gallery. "No commentary." The room settled deeper. Henderson resumed his post, statue still and human. The clerk cued the first file. Numbers rolled like a tide returning. Donovan tried again. "Your Honor, I request—" "You will be heard under oath," Celeste said, "and the record will be heard first." The sentence clicked like a key finding its lock. Fletcher's fingers trembled, then stilled. Shaw leaned a fraction forward, not in hunger but in recognition. Vance glanced at the oath card and looked ashamed only of haste. Celeste lifted the remote and paused. Power did not require hurry. It required sequence. She set the pace with silence, letting the air learn its new arrangement. "Begin with lobby camera north," she said. The cursor slid, hovered, and held. The slate waited at the lip of motion. In that held breath, the courtroom felt its axis shift, a quiet rotation from story to proof, from noise to oath, from mourning to judgment. Donovan understood the shape of what he could not stop. The turn had already turned. Now, the slate blinked from black to image. Lobby camera north filled the screen. The courthouse doors, the morning glare. Time code stamped the corner. The frame found Donovan's arm rising, palm open, then the crack. Papers flew, the crowd flinched. Celeste's head snapped, then steadied. Captions crawled beneath. Filthy animals like you don't belong in courthouses. You belong in cages. Around the gallery, a hush tightened. Faces registered the dissonance. The battered woman from the steps now steering the law from the bench. Donovan felt the floor tilt. Fletcher's stomach dropped. Shaw's focus hardened. "Pause," Celeste said. The bruise on her cheek colored the room more than the screen could. "Resume." Steps cam 2 took over. Different angle, same morning. The insult again, smaller but unmistakable. Donovan shoving, Fletcher laughing. Phones raised like a forest of small betrayals. "Bodycam Unit 14, Celeste instructed. A beep, then the clipped tunnel of a chest mic. The image wobbled as Donovan turned. The time overlay read 09:07:58, then 09:08:21, smooth as a second hand. No blackout, no gap. Donovan's voice landed where the CCTV had placed it. "Thought you could walk in here like you mattered? Look at you. Nothing but a black—" He never finished the word on camera. The slap did it for him. Another beep sounded when he yanked Celeste toward the doors. The clock in frame rolled to 09:09:12. "Freeze at 09:09:44, Celeste said. The image held. Donovan's profile was sharp, the badge visible. Celeste's papers hung mid-fall like startled birds. The caption beneath the still said only, "Minimal force," as written in Donovan's intake narrative. "Bring up today's intake forms." The document filled the split screen. Camera still on the left, Fletcher's handwriting on the right. The line at the bottom shone faintly. "Under penalty of perjury." Fletcher read it as if seeing it for the first time. "Officer Fletcher," Celeste said, tone neutral. "Please locate the time of incident you recorded." 9:12, Your Honor." Celeste nodded toward the counter. "What time does the video show?" 9:09, Your Honor." His voice was small. 9:09 and change. "And the words you attributed to the subject?" she asked. "Where in the record do they appear?" He scanned his paragraph. Then the captions. "They don't," he admitted. "Not like that." Celeste returned to Donovan. "You will have your chance to explain," she said. "Under oath." She faced the prosecutor's table. "Ms. Shaw?" Shaw stood. Neutrality would not hold. "Your Honor," she said, careful and clear, "the people move to withdraw all charges against Judge Celeste Marshall." The title landed like a hinge finding its groove. "We reserve the right to be heard further on matters arising from the footage." A small wave of relief and shame moved through her voice at once. "Noted," Celeste said. "Granted." "We have heard today," she added. "We will now consider what today belongs to." She signaled toward the side door. Janet Ellison entered with a thin binder. She set it on the evidence cart and stepped back. "Clerk," Celeste said, "mark this as Exhibit G." The binder opened to a modest index. Select internal affairs summaries, complaint intake abstracts, a short chain of correspondence. Celeste kept the monitor split. Left, the morning we had watched. Right, dates and lines that explained its ancestry. "Note the dates," she said. 6 months. Repeated dismissals for lack of evidence. On several, the officer's body cam shows a gap of about 3 minutes. She did not say Donovan's name. The pages did. "ET email," Janet prompted softly. The clerk pulled a single message into the queue. From Systems Support. Subject, Bodycam Auto Backup Availability. The text was brisk. "Auto backup has been online for months. Units sync over secure Wi-Fi when in range. Manual deletion cannot defeat server cached fragments." Celeste let the words hang. Today's footage survived because the unit entered range before any manual action could occur, she said. That is why we can see what we are seeing. Donovan shifted in the chair. Your Honor, you will be heard, Celeste said again. Under oath. She drew the split smaller and placed 3 elements side by side. The slap, the time code, the perjury line. It looked like a triptych and felt like a verdict arriving in parts. Officer Fletcher, she said, do you wish to amend your statement? He stared at the screen, then at his signature. Yes, Your Honor. Clerk will receive the amendment, Celeste said, and advise the witness of consequences should he choose otherwise. Fletcher nodded. Shaw's pen finally moved, this time to write. Celeste faced Donovan. Officer Donovan, you will answer after review of the bodycam segment covering 0907 to 0910. Then we will address your narrative under oath. She looked to the gallery. This record speaks in its own voice. We will listen. Henderson dimmed the room 1 notch. The monitor washed the wood with steady light. Numbers rolled forward again. On the far aisle, Fletcher's whisper barely left his mouth. He told me to phrase it this way. Always. He meant it for himself. The auxiliary mic tucked under the rail heard it anyway. The line drifted into the speakers like a truth that had learned to tiptoe. The gallery froze. Donovan did not turn his head. The cursor on the screen kept moving, and with it, the morning finally began to tell the whole of itself. The room exhaled. The room did not breathe until the last frame faded. Celeste leaned forward, voice level, cadence quickening. Officer Donovan, your intake states you used no insulting language. The record says otherwise. She lifted the remote. The insult rolled again across captions and air. Repeat for the court, she said, eyes on him. The sentence you deny. Donovan's mouth opened and closed. I don't recall. You recall your signature, Celeste cut in. Under penalty of perjury. She pointed to the lower right of the form. Is that your hand? Yes. Then words matter? Here is the record. She read, clear and precise. Filthy animals like you don't belong in courthouses. You belong in cages. Silence took the room like a second gavel. Those are your words, documented by 2 public cameras and your own body cam. Do you contest that? He stared at the screen. It was a tense situation, he said, voice thinning. The subject was a citizen, Celeste said. Name, Celeste Marshall. Status, Juris Doctor. Injury, visible. She let the bruise speak. Your narrative denies insults, denies force beyond minimal. The record refutes both. Time next. You stated 9:12. The video shows 9:09. The lobby clock shows 9:09. Your body cam overlay shows 9:09 and seconds. She nodded to the clerk, who brought up a log. Connected, 090731. Stream continuous. Explain the mismatch. Donovan blinked. Timing drift. Equipment. The same drift that coincides with minutes in which complaints show gaps? Convenient instruments, officer. She didn't wait for a reply. Officer Fletcher, stand. Fletcher stood as if the floor had tilted. You signed a statement at 9:21. It describes profanity not in the video and places the incident at 9:12. Do you stand by it? He looked at his signature as though it belonged to someone else. No, Your Honor. Why did you write it? Because that's how we've always written it, he said. There's a template. I copied the phrasing. Donovan turned, color climbing his neck. Ryan. Officer Donovan, Celeste said. Address the court. Fletcher pressed on. He told me how to write it. When there was conflict, we framed it the same. Perceived threat. Minimal force. Subject refused commands. We'd fill the time from memory if the unit lagged. The unit did not lag, Celeste said. It recorded. The record will correct the story. Vance cleared his throat. Your Honor, perhaps we ought to pause. Decorum is what we are restoring, Celeste answered. I am opening a limited evidentiary hearing on the record. Perjury by sworn officers and violations of civil rights under color of law. Today's events only. Rights are preserved for subsequent proceedings. Shaw stood. The people are prepared to proceed, Your Honor. Her voice had lost its earlier caution. Celeste turned back to Donovan. You took an oath minutes ago. You saw the footage. Do you still deny using those words? I misspoke, he said. Stress. You struck a citizen at a courthouse entrance while your body cam recorded continuously. You then signed a narrative repudiated by 3 synchronized time sources. That is not stress. That is design. Fletcher was breathing faster now. I want to correct more than today, he said. There are other reports, other gaps. You will have that opportunity through proper channels, Celeste said. For now, amend today. Yes, Your Honor. Celeste faced the gallery. We proceed by steps, she said. Today first, then the pattern to which today belongs. She returned to the image of the slap and let it rest on screen. Officer Donovan, your hand rose, your words rose, your rank rose. That is a climb toward abuse, not order. Her voice did not rise. Answer the court. Did you call a black woman an animal? Did you tell her she belonged in a cage? He tried for authority and found volume. I was securing the perimeter. Celeste waited. He deflated. Yes, he said. I said it. A murmur moved through the pews, not triumphant, but relieved to have truth stop lying. And did you record an incident time 3 minutes late? Yes. Did you sign a narrative falsely denying insulting language? A beat. Yes. Celeste made 3 check marks on the pad before her. Nothing theatrical. The court finds probable cause that perjury has occurred in this courtroom and that a deprivation of rights under color of law occurred at the courthouse entrance. The hearing will continue. Vance nodded, chastened. Shaw stepped into the space the truth had opened. The people moved to place Officer Donovan under oath for immediate questioning regarding today's conduct and to secure him pending further charges. So ordered, Celeste said. Mr. Henderson, summon the United States Marshals. Henderson's call into the hall was crisp. Boots answered it. 2 marshals entered, dark jackets absorbing light. Officer Donovan, Celeste said, you will remain seated. You are not free to leave this courtroom. Fletcher stared at the floor, then up. I'm ready to amend, he said, steadier, and cooperate. That will be noted, Celeste said. She returned to the screen. Play the segment from 090840 to 090910, she said. Then we will swear Officer Fletcher for amended testimony. The numbers rolled. The gallery held its breath again. The insult returned. The hand returned. The law, at last, returned to itself. Donovan glanced at the marshals and understood what pending immediate judgment meant. The boomerang had circled. It had come home. Late light burnished the wood. Celeste held the bench with stillness. The violet along her cheek stayed honest. Henderson stood his post. Vance took a respectful seat along the rail. 2 marshals bracketed Donovan. Fletcher held his hands open on the table. Rebecca Shaw waited, composed, pen-capped. The record has spoken, Celeste said. This court adopts it. She named the counts with calm economy. Assault on a federal officer, a sitting judge, false statement under oath, obstruction of evidence. Deprivation of rights under color of law. Each offense strikes not only a person, but the oath. The oath must weigh more than the badge. She turned a page. 2011, Alvarez. Wrist fracture outside this courthouse. Body cam gap of 2 minutes. Narrative cites minimal force. No third-party footage preserved. Another page. 2016, Reed. Racial epithets alleged during a stop. Phone video seized and later unrecoverable. Complaint dismissed. Another. 2019, Coleman. Concussion at intake. Report drafted with the same template phrases we saw today. All three bear Officer Donovan's signature or supervision. A murmur moved like weather through the pews. Celeste kept her cadence steady. Today's evidence, continuous body cam overlay, public CCTV, and sworn amendments, gives this court reason to believe patterns of manipulation infected prior matters. We will address that after sentence. She looked to Donovan. Sentencing, Officer Cole Donovan. You struck a citizen at Justice's door and attempted to launder that harm with narrative. You endangered not only a person, but the promise this building makes. Aggravators outweigh mitigators. This was not heat, it was habit. She read the counts and the years with the clarity of math. Count 1, deprivation of rights under color of law, with bodily injury, 15 years. Count 2, obstruction of justice through falsification and concealment of records, 7 years. Count 3, perjury under oath before this court, 5 years. Count 4, assault on a federal officer, judge, 3 years. Terms to run consecutive where the law allows. Total term, 30 years with the Bureau of Prisons. Upon release, a term of supervised release shall apply. Restitution is ordered to victims and complainants. You are permanently barred from any law enforcement employment. The marshals did not move. The chain clicked once. Final punctuation. Donovan's shoulders dropped as if the room had adjusted its gravity. Officer Ryan Fletcher, Celeste said. He stood. You signed a false account and repeated a template designed to excuse harm. You also corrected course under oath and offered cooperation. Allocution? I was wrong, he said. I can document how the template spread and where the gaps were made. On a misdemeanor count of false filing, Celeste pronounced, the court imposes 12 months, suspended, 5 years probation, 2,000 hours of service to Innocence Review, mandatory cooperation with federal investigators, instruction to recruits on oath integrity. Any failure voids suspension. Your badge, if any remains, is surrendered. Fletcher nodded, eyes wet but steady. Repair begins, Celeste continued. By order of this court, the clerk shall reopen all matters involving Officer Donovan across 20 years, approximately 400 cases, for federal review. A task force is appointed with subpoena power to secure records, retrieve server-cached bodycam fragments, and interview complainants. A special master will oversee chain of custody and audit timelines. Convictions may be stayed where lawful. Dismissals examined for fraud. Pleas scrutinized. Defense counsel of record will be noticed. Shaw stepped to the lectern. For the people, we support the task force and withdraw all charges against Judge Marshall with prejudice. We will assign a liaison to assist the special master and move to vacate any conviction infected by manipulation. The contrition in her tone chose precision over flourish. We failed before we corrected course. That failure is ours. Noted, Celeste said. She turned to policy. Effective immediately, allegations of assault by sworn officers with indicators of racial animus are referred to federal jurisdiction for preliminary review. We establish a bias assault fast track. mandatory body cam retention, nightly auto backup audits, disciplinary holds on involved officers, a protected whistleblower channel to chambers, compliance grants for municipal partners, quarterly public metrics. The rear doors opened. Chief Judge David Carter entered with a small escort and a red ribbon portfolio. He stopped at the well, eyes on Celeste, then the seal above her. "Your Honor," he said, formal and warm, "this court speaks for the district today." He set a single-page order bearing seal and ribbon. "By administrative order, we adopt your framework district-wide, effective upon signature." He signed, ink settling into the paper. He did not take the bench. He stood just off it, lending the seat his weight without occupying it. Celeste inclined her head. "The record will reflect the Chief Judge's presence and order." She looked to Vance. He rose, managed a rueful nod. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for reminding me that procedure isn't scenery." "Mr. Henderson," Celeste said, "note appearances for the task force. Chambers will chair. The U.S. Attorney's Office will staff the review. The Federal Public Defender will appoint a liaison. Community advocates may observe under confidentiality. No backlog will hide. First report in 90 days. Henderson made the notation, voice low and certain. Celeste turned once more to Donovan. "You are remanded to immediate custody." The marshals stepped in, not with spectacle, but with finality. Donovan stared at the floor he had once walked like a stage. "To the gallery," Celeste said. "Today we returned the oath to its proper weight. The law keeps if we keep it. We will keep it. No more than that. Enough." She lifted the gavel. "This court stands adjourned." Wood met wood. The sound rose and rested. Work began as if the sound itself had wheels. In an evidence room, technicians sealed white boxes, labels crisp. Donovan, reopen. In records, a clerk stacked dockets for scanning. A scanner's light moved like a new day across old paper. In a municipal archive, a dusty ledger breathed under clean light while a task force team logged exhibits. A server room pulled down auto backups that had been waiting for someone to ask them to speak. One more cut. A porch at dusk. A grandmother with a pillbox and a prom photo under glass. She held a younger hand and listened to a voicemail that used the word reopen like a key. Her eyes closed. "Finally," she whispered. The last frame returned to the courthouse door where the morning's slap had echoed. Now the echo was different. It was the gavel learning how to be thunder, and the building, at last, answering back. The first headline hit before the doors cooled. Federal bench orders sweeping review of police cases. By noon, the Chiron said it simpler. Justice returns to the record. Commentators replayed the moment the robe met the bruise and left the bruise on screen like a compass. On phones and sidewalks, the story left the building. One tag rose above the noise. Justice with Judge Marshall. Old videos resurfaced asking for a new hearing. A retired bus driver lifted a manila envelope of letters stamped insufficient evidence. "Maybe it's sufficient now," she said. At community centers and kitchen tables, women over 50 led the talk with the steadiness of people who waited years to be believed. They traded tips on body cam requests, kept receipts, cried without apologies. "Dignity isn't a tone," one said. "It's a fact." She reminded them. Another added, "She reminded us." Local stations interviewed prior complainants. Alvarez showed a crooked wrist. 11 years I told this story, he said. Today it sounds different. Ms. Reed declined to repeat the slurs from 2016. She repeated the policy instead. Fast track, audit, safe channel. "I'm here for the next woman," she said. Applications for compensation guidance spiked. City hotlines bent under calls. A nonprofit posted how to reopen your case. It crossed 1 million views by midnight. The final line was quiet and contagious. Keep your file where the future can reach it. Community legal clinics extended hours. Church basements turned into pop-up intake rooms. Posters in 3 languages read, "Bring your truth. We will hold it." No appointment needed. Dignity first. Paperwork follows tonight. At the prosecutor's office, Rebecca Shaw faced a camera and didn't rehearse. "We failed today before we corrected course. We won't again," she said. "If your case touched Donovan's orbit, call me. If you know where the gaps live, call me. We would rather repair than defend the unrepairable." Behind her, boxes labeled Task Force, intake weighted like new furniture. In precincts, policy memos arrived with the morning coffee. Bodycam audits became a shift change ritual. Supervisors signed holds on officers clustered in complaints. A few grumbled. Most complied. Above a docking station, someone posted, "We wear the camera, it doesn't wear us." At the federal building, the special master sworn that afternoon raised a glass-walled war room. Timeline boards went up. The software drew the lines. A dashboard ticked, 017, 039, 084, 122. A second counter glowed in the corner. Compensation, reviewing. Toward evening, Celeste walked the hallway to chambers. The building had learned a calmer silence. Henderson peeled off to the elevators, promising reports by morning. Janet unlocked the door and turned on the lamp that made the room a study. The gavel waited, walnut dark and honest. Celeste set her palm on its head. The engraving caught the light. Justice is blind, but she sees everything. She stood at the window and watched the plaza traffic bend around the courthouse steps. People were photographing the door. She thought of the librarian who kept the lights on, of the days when the law felt like a ladder missing rungs, of the slap turned into sentence. Memory visited, then left with good manners. "Media requests," Janet said, tapping a folder. "Community panels, law schools. 3 grandmothers want you at their church basement." Celeste smiled. "Which one?" "All 3. We'll send people who can help, not just inspire," Celeste said. "Checklist for reopening, hotline hours, intake volunteers, add a line, no one owes their story to be believed." She signed 2 authorizations and initialed a draft to let the task force hire trauma-informed interviewers. She circled mercy, not as condition, as equipment. On her desk, beside the gavel, a blue folder waited, closed to everything but its first letter, H. It felt heavy the way a quiet stone feels heavy because it knows where it belongs. She did not open it. Not yet. A bright chime from the corner monitor. Janet checked the alert and met her eyes. "Auto backup pulled a new clip," she said. "Time-stamped last night. It matches the initial in blue." Celeste nodded. "Tomorrow," she said. Order, then evidence. Night took the windows. Outside, the hashtag moved slower, like a tide settling into policy. In a small apartment, a son explained restitution to his mother. In a barber shop, a headline was folded for all to see. On a bus, a meme of a gavel and running shoes made a stranger laugh. Outro belongs to the people who carried the morning into evening. If this story met you where you live, stay with us. Help carry the next one. Subscribe to JusticeSoul for more justice stories that remember the bruise and honor the bench. The work continues. The promise keeps. And somewhere in the blue folder, tomorrow has already started.